Happy Thursday afternoon. I'm Jim with the Maryland Distillers Guild and Grow Fortify. Today's special edition of our Thirsty Thursday chat is going to cover the legislative updates that we have going into the 2021 session of the General Assembly. We've got some really great things on the docket that we're going to be advocating for on behalf of the state's distilling industry and spirits manufacturers. So we'll jump right into that. Before we get started, I always like to start these off by letting everybody know that our state's distilleries are still open for business. Whether you want to go into a distillery and purchase spirits there, order your spirits ahead of time for pickup or carry out or curbside, or even at-home delivery or shipping within the state, distilleries have all kinds of options for you right now. Everybody's goal is to keep you safe and to keep your bar stocked with locally produced spirits. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kevin Addix, our executive director and my boss. Great guy to talk to. Hey, Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
It's like I've seen you so many times today in different conversations. This is going to be a fun one now.
It's all which browser and which platform, but this is the best.
I'm glad we found the right place to be. I'm going to kill this sun in the background in just a minute, I promise. I'm also going to introduce Scott with Patapsco Distilling. Scott, how you doing this afternoon?
Wonderful. How you doing? Hey, Kevin.
Kevin is not outside, so Scott, I think I'm going to have to come and sample some bourbon.
Absolutely. We're releasing our single malt in a couple of weeks, so.
You're saving me a bottle, right?
Is the one-legged duck swim in a circle?
Yeah, good. There you go.
And also joining us is Jeff from Sang Foi Distillery. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well, Jim. How are you doing?
Doing great. So today's talk is a special one. We're going into session. We are excited about some possibilities for what's going on in 2021. And I think this gives us an opportunity to let our viewers know kind of where we've been as an industry, what challenges we faced in the past, and talk about the things that we're hoping to get moved forward this year. Kevin, do you mind giving a quick, brief history of what has stood out as far as legislation for the industry in the last couple of years?
Sure. Well, I can remember 2012 or 2013 when there was some new distilleries getting started and they were interested in helping to change the law. And I was kind of on the sidelines working with the wineries and kind of watching what was happening. And it didn't go so well in Annapolis. And it's because there were, unfortunately, a lot of interests against the industry. You know, retail or wholesale interests who were spooked by distilleries and any other manufacturer interested in selling product or making more product. And it was really in 2015, 2016 when we started to see some big changes. The ability for distillers to self-distribute. I mean, that was a huge one. You know, before 2015, they were not allowed to sell their own products to stores or restaurants. They had to use a third-party distributor. And as I'm sure you've discussed with guests before, when you're small and new, there's not a lot of demand for your products, and the wholesalers aren't interested because there's not a lot of demand. And so you really need to be able to get out there and peddle your own product up to a certain point, and then the distributors will want to take you on. There was Distillery Modernization Act, where we changed the Class 1 distillery around to allow for sample cocktails, to allow for the ability to sell products to go. Before that, you were not allowed to sell bottles to go. Rectifying, which sounds not great, but rectifying allows distillers to bring in products. I always giggle when I say the word, but bring in products and blend them. And then the cocktail bill 2 years ago, which are 2019.
It was last year.
Was it last year?
Well, 2019. It came into effect October 2019.
Yeah, 2020 didn't happen, right? So it was 2019 last year. So, and that allows distilleries to sell cocktails. There was also the creation of the Class 9 distilling license, which let some distilleries basically look like brew pubs, right? So they could have their product anchor their offerings in kind of a restaurant setting, and we've got a few of those around the state. So there've been some pretty big advancements, but also a lot of things on the horizon.
I think that's a really great summary. And before this started, we were kind of going over the things that we're looking forward to in the future and what's going to stand out. And I asked Scott and Jeff what the things were that really already were very impactful for them. And I think both of you said cocktails were great options and the ability to offer those.
Huge. The cocktails were the biggest help we've had so far, since we don't do the delivery and we don't do shipping yet. So cocktails were huge for us. And that was a 3-year slog trying to get that through.
So
made a lot of friends.
Can you explain what the impact of having the ability to sell cocktails to consumers is in the tasting room, not just as a revenue standpoint, but we kind of discussed how it impacts sales of your other spirits?
When we first opened, we were allowed to do 3 half-ounce samples per person per visit. So the funny joke at that point was, well, what's a visit? Walk out the door, come back in, you can have 3 more half-ounce samples of straight vodka, gin, and bourbon at the time. Not many people enjoy straight vodka, straight gin, or straight bourbon at home.
Right.
So the push was to get it into the consumer's hand in a format that they would enjoy it, or even introduce them into a new cocktail or format they might enjoy their beverage, and then sell them the stuff so they could go home and make it at home too. So that was a huge push. And that was, that bill died and came back to life. That was like Frankenbill. I remember the conversation I had with Kevin at the time. I thought he was joking when he called me up and told me he was dead.
Yeah, the bill was on a path to pass, and unfortunately, I left the room, and someone had wild hair, and they voted the bill down, and we had to work magic to get the bill reconsidered, which is not something that happens a lot in Annapolis. Usually, a bill dies and it comes back next year, but we were able to work with some folks who support the industry and understood it after we explained it again. And a lot of our bills have tripped up because you've got the other side. The unnamed, those about who we do not speak, people who look at any time a distillery wants to sample a product or sell a product or accommodate a public as taking away from a bar, a restaurant, or a liquor store. And it just doesn't happen. You have a unique product that when people are coming to see you, generally you are introducing them to that product. They wouldn't have bought that in a liquor store until after they visit you, and then they'll go buy it in a liquor store, or they'll come back, get another bottle from you, and at some point you're big enough and are in distribution and your product's everywhere.
And I have a restaurant right next to me which uses our spirits, so I've had multiple people come over with their little table, the little thing that vibrates to let them know their table's ready. They come and try it at our place, and they go over and eat dinner and order it for dinner at the other one. It's fantastic.
I think that's a great point. Having been in the world of offering retail tastings in a liquor store, even that can be a challenging and dubious undertaking, because you go in and you're there for several hours with your product, you're keyed up to get it sold, but people walk in there with an expectation of what they're going to buy already. And trying to change that mindset in a couple of samples in a 2-minute interaction that you have with somebody is a very difficult thing to do. So laying that foundation and getting the expectation into the customer's mind, which is, I really loved Scott's bourbon, or I really loved Jeff's gin in those cocktails that I tasted, I need to go and get those, means a lot.
Yeah, I agree. The restaurant goes through more gin than I do.
And for us, we're in more of a commercial area, so we get a lot of walk-in traffic that didn't know we were here, didn't intend to visit a distillery and try straight spirits in the middle of the day on a Saturday when they're out just doing regular shopping. So for the first year and a half that we were open, that was difficult, because a lot of those people are just kind of taken aback by drinking 40% alcohol in the middle of the day. And I can't tell you how many times someone would say, for our whiskey or for one of our gins, well, hey, can I use this whiskey in a Manhattan? Well, of course you can, but we weren't able to share that with them. So it was a great transition to be able to start showcasing our spirits and something that would be familiar to someone who's mixing drinks at home or ordering a cocktail at a bar or restaurant.
So, having had that success with the 2019 cocktail bill coming to life and offering you a new opportunity to showcase your products and to generate a little bit of revenue, if you were running a cocktail program, and looking over Jeff's shoulder, I can see some great ingredients in the background that indicate that there's some pretty killer cocktails. What in 2020 kind of changed and threw you all through a loop? Was it not being able to open up to all the public, or I'm trying to make light of a really bad situation because I think we got some great momentum out of it that's going to help the industry into the future.
With 2020 and COVID, the shutting down, that was definitely painful. But when the TTB allowed us to do hand sanitizer, that was fantastic. I think every Maryland distillery started making hand sanitizer, and that truly, I think, saved some of the distilleries in town, or in the state, I should say. It definitely helped us for a little while. So that happened when we were allowed to open back up to sales. The removing the cap of, I believe it was 4 bottles, 750 ml bottles, three 750 ml bottles. Thank you, Kevin.
Slow down, man. Slow down. 3 bottles. 3 bottles.
Well, that was the biggest package I had. I had a container for 3 bottles. Yeah. Right, per visit, so they could leave and come back. Removing that cap was nice. I can tell you right now, I think I've only had, even through the holiday season, maybe 3 customers come in, and they bought 4. Nobody's coming in buying cases.
Right.
I mean, I'd like them to, but it's just, that's not what they do.
Well, and you know, I was in there recently, and I was one of those people that, you know, I'm there, I'm buying for me, and I'm buying a gift for someone. I got another gift for someone else, and if you've got, you know, a live one on the line, and they want to buy a 4th bottle of a product that's not available in their local liquor store, I mean, that's the point here. Who in whose best interest is it to keep you from doing that? Is it the tax base? No. Is it the customer? No. Is it anyone else? Because anybody else doesn't matter. It's about you, the taxes you raise, the business that you bring in, the town that you support. And, you know, to have even 3 people buy that 4th bottle, those were 3 extra bottles that you wouldn't have sold. Yep. Or as Jeff said, they would have had to crack the code and walk it to their car and come back and buy another one. Well, what is the point?
Yeah, there isn't one.
Right.
I think the other thing to come out of this that has been helping a lot of our members, and is something that we are, well, before we jump into how it's helping people, can we talk about the big items that we want to address this year with the legislation, and see how those things can impact the businesses in the state?
Your show.
No,
do whatever you want,
Great idea.
All right, so the first piece that we're really interested in is direct-to-consumer shipping. So, Kevin, can we lay out what the ground rules are now for shipping of spirits, beer, and wine in the state, just so we can have a comparison and see how people can understand where these things differ?
Sure. So after a 30-year slog in 2011, the wineries were able to pass a bill to allow for direct shipping of wine. And the sky was going to fall, and it was just going to be awful, and kids were all going to get wine delivered, and, you know, parties would be flushed with Maryland wine, teen parties would be flushed with Maryland wine, and it didn't happen. And so we've had 9 years of real successful business models being formed by our wineries in the state, where they have developed wine clubs where every, you know, quarter or every other month they're sending a bottle to 3 bottles to 4 bottles to 12 bottles to customers, and it's worked really well. It's helped our wineries to not only grow their customer base, but introduce interesting wines to that group almost as a trial. So you can join these wine clubs and get products that no one else can get. And then eventually over the years, they come out to the general market. Beer and spirits up until June were not allowed to be shipped. And that changed with our group and others arguing to the governor, hey, with the business model closing down, everybody's business model up to the beginning of COVID just completely turned on its head. We need other ways to reach customers. You're telling us that we shouldn't host customers. You're telling us that customers shouldn't leave their homes. So we need other ways to do it. Here's this legal, safe, secure, compliant channel, sales channel or mode that wineries have been using. Let us try it. And the governor obliged, and in late May, early June, authorized breweries, distilleries, and wineries who didn't already have the permit to ship. And they have to use a third-party common carrier, which is FedEx, UPS, company like that, and has to check ID and all of those things. And it's worked really well. We've had distilleries who've built whole new markets based on shipping.
I know we're taking a quick break.
The dog here.
We've got dogs in the background.
I didn't know if you could hear the birds behind me. I had a flock of birds come by. That's why I was looking up. I'm like, freaking seriously?
Scott, there's something on your shirt there too. Yeah, it was birding by. I'm just kidding.
I think that Kevin brings a great point there. This idea that shipping to people who are hesitant to travel through the state under restrictions that we've seen, or just may not have the interest in being out and about. It's an avenue that without, some people would really have a hard time reaching some of their customers. And I think that the shipping option is great. So Kevin, under the proposed legislation, how would shipping work for spirits in the state?
So under the proposed legislation, it's very simply taking the governor's executive order and making it permanent in law. And no fuss, no further concerns. It's the good news about doing it is that it takes it from the ether of the governor, saying it with his magic wand during the emergency state, to putting it in law, saying who's regulating it. Although the comptroller is regulating it now, it's just very specific in law, and it will lay out the parameters and allow regulations to be developed. So it's looking a lot like how the wineries are able to ship.
Are there the same arguments about how the sky is going to fall with relation to codifying this and making it a permanent option?
It's interesting as we've been talking with other groups and other stakeholders, folks who've in the past been concerned about these things. They have some concerns, but they also, for better or worse, there have not been issues with the winery shipping. And that's really the precedent that's been set. And we're not asking for the world here. We're asking to be able to meet our customers on demand. You're not going to be selling millions of bottles of this stuff, because at the end of the day, it's expensive, heavy liquid. Right? So it's not free shipping. Show a free delivery shows up tomorrow. It's people have to pay for it. It's a premium product. But if a customer is interested in buying your product that way, you should be able to sell it that way.
And to that point, there are not many distilleries in the state who are offering shipping. We have a few, and they seem to be having varied success with it, because there is that barrier, which is the shipping cost, to determine whether or not that sale and that transaction is going to be completed, and that's up to the consumer to make that decision right now. I think that this would be a good segue into another avenue at which our distilleries are able to get products into the hands of their consumers in places that are not right next to the distillery. And that's been the door-to-door delivery that a lot of distilleries have been offering. And I'll take a whack at introducing that, since Kevin did such a good job with the shipping. During COVID, one of the other options that was made available to Maryland distilleries was the ability to transact the sale and then deliver the product directly to the customer. Again, verifying that the person who was picking up the product or receiving the product was of legal age, so 21 years or older, and that they were also the person who they said they were when they ordered the product. So talking to Jeff a little bit earlier, delivery has made a very big impact for you over the last few months. And can you tell us a little bit about why?
Yeah, it has. I'd say over the last 6 months, a quarter to a third of our sales have been delivery, and we've limited our delivery distribution footprint to more or less a few miles within the distillery. But it's been helpful because we're in a pretty metropolitan area, and there are a lot of people that live here that rely on public transportation, the bus, metro, to get around town, even to our area where our distillery is. And people reasonably have been reluctant to ride on public buses, public metro, and so having the ability for us to deliver to their door has been huge, and it also gives us face time with customers that we might not have been able to see because they couldn't have made it to the distillery for whatever reason. So it's been a really helpful avenue for us to reach additional people that we otherwise couldn't have. So and it's also been great for the state and for restaurants to be able to do this too, because we can deliver to restaurants, we can sell to restaurants, and then restaurants can also deliver. So that really extends our footprint a little bit further afield too. So it's kind of two ways that it's helping us.
One of the success stories, huge success story with delivery throughout the state that we were all kind of talking about is what's going on with Lion Rum out of St. Michael's. I mean, they just bought this great rum runner delivery van. They're cruising all over the state, getting their rum into people's hands. They're delivering for the other brand that's produced there, Grey Wolf. And I think that that's just a huge success and a great thing to show. Like, in this terrible situation, this maturing business was able to very quickly pivot, change their model. They closed down their tasting room to folks coming in, but they were able to still get their spirits into the hands of their consumer. And I think without that, it would be a whole different story.
Yeah, jobs were retained specifically for delivering. People who were being pulled off the line, or when sanitizer began to slow down, they got in the trucks and they delivered. And what's great about Lion, and I made use of it just to see if it worked, and sure enough, the next day on my doorstep, wife answering the door, who is this woman and why is she bringing you booze? But it worked, and they made sure we were of age, even though we know who they are, and it worked. I mean, the whole system works, and it worked really well. Could I jump back to shipping for a moment?
Please.
So something just to show you how quickly things evolved. So when shipping was authorized in June, we then had to make sure that the common carriers were teed up. So FedEx and UPS are already shipping wine, and we know in other states they ship liquor. They were hesitant at first to ship because it was by executive order and not by statute, and so they wanted to be able to point to the law and have their attorneys read it. Finally, we worked with UPS, and they entered kind of this trial period where our distillers had to use a subcontractor of theirs in order to be compliant. And while that worked for some distilleries who were desperate to get out and ship, a lot of our distillers held off until that requirement was dropped. And once that was dropped, lots of them have signed up directly with UPS, and there are a lot of Maryland spirits flowing. And again, the volume, the overall volume is not outrageous, but when you're talking maybe 100 bottles for a small distillery, that's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. And they didn't have to accommodate the public in their store. They had to, talk to a friendly guy or gal in a brown uniform, or maybe not even talk to them, just leave the box out and send it off. So it's a whole new channel, just like with delivery. It wasn't contemplated before, but when it became an option, my gosh, what a difference it made.
And I think that lack of restriction for the subcontract or whatever to be the barrier really opened that up widely for distilleries to make the decision to offer that as part of their service. I think that the delivery thing is great. Jeff, I hadn't even thought about that point, that the restaurant is now your extension with delivery also.
Right, they're a third-party contractor.
I've taken the liberty to purchase cocktails to go from restaurants, and I think it's a great thing. And at that point, I can see it, but I hadn't even thought about the delivery of cocktail. I haven't done that yet, so I might have to try that sometime soon. And then I don't want to rush through the rest of what we have going on. We can go a few minutes over our 4:00 stop time, but the third piece on our agenda is the raising of caps for carry-out sales. As Scott mentioned earlier, there's a 3-bottle limit of 750 mils per bottle. That's just to get to the total volume that was determined. It doesn't seem like a lot of those volumes are set through any kind of rubric that makes a whole lot of sense to the public, but it also doesn't mean that there's a reason that those caps should exist. So it sounds like our goal is to talk about how we can allow distilleries to sell the volume that the customer wants rather than the volume that's set by the legislature. Is that right, Kevin?
Just one thing I'll say about that the whole concept goes back to not being in control, right? And we have not been in control as a new industry of developing our own licenses. We come up with recommendations and suggestions, and then we are made to negotiate. And there are certain things that it makes all the sense in the world to talk with other segments of the industry about and come up with reasons and rationale. And we did so with a cocktail permit a year and a half ago. I'll give 2020 some credence. So a year and a half ago, and worked with the retailers and came up with numbers that made sense, that were probably more than most of our distillers would ever reach in terms of the volume of cocktails that they would be sold, but they wanted a number in there. And so we worked with them on that. But 3 bottles?
So
arbitrary.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I can say from our experience just this past year, because so many people have had to ship gifts, particularly during the holidays, that for better or worse, alcohol was a popular gift this year, and the 3-bottle limit would have driven customers away. And I think, like Kevin was emphasizing, it wasn't based in any particular reasoning. It was just kind of abstract and random. So if someone has 6 relatives that they want to buy bottles for, they can do that. And if someone has 6 work friends that they want to buy bottles for, they can do that, or 12, or
it's my kind of friend.
If you're sending them to clients, for instance, those types of scenarios are real, and the ability to serve that for us, I think it's huge.
I was having a conversation with the marketing committee from the Maryland Wineries Association earlier this week, and we were talking about the pieces of legislation that we were going to be discussing in our calls throughout the week at each one of the associations. And they were flabbergasted to learn that there were limits on your ability to sell to your consumer directly. And they mentioned the exact same things. We sell for people who want to buy gifts for their students, teachers. We sell for people who want to buy gifts for their family for the holidays. Corporate gifts, anything, the ability to do that has always been there, or at least in recent memory. And,
yep,
and they feel that is something that's very important to their industry, and we're just blown away. They're like, how are they doing this with only the ability to sell 3 bottles at a time?
And that's been one of the talking points when we meet with our legislators, that A, we're trying to get on a level playing field with breweries and wineries. B, we're an agribusiness. So when we make more grain or more alcohol, we need more grain. I buy as much grain as I can locally. I'm having a hard time getting rye right now, but I blame somebody in downtown Baltimore for that. But
we're all having trouble.
But that's a good thing. I mean, it truly is. So it's just communication and getting the legislators to understand we're not asking for something that doesn't already exist for a very similar industry.
Well, and it also exists for customers of yours. If you're selling into a retailer, there's nobody saying that I can't walk into a retailer and buy 5 cases of Scott's bourbon at the retailer. Yeah. Other than Scott's availability, there should be no limit.
Yeah,
So
couldn't agree more.
And then I guess the last thing that we're going to focus on is one that may be a little more out there in the ether for the consumer and may not directly apply to them. But the last point that we're talking about this legislative session is trying to figure out a way to allow for flexible licensing fees. Kevin, why is this important to the industry? And then we could talk to Scott and Jeff about how it would impact them.
Well, so twofold. So we know during the pandemic that quite frankly, businesses had trouble paying bills and paying rent and renewing licenses. And so one of the first things the governor did was postponed renewals. And one of the issues that has, it's great, and we loved it, and it was great to be able to go through a license and a permit cycle, not renewing and not paying the renewals, because the distillery license is what, $2,000?
Yep.
Plus the self-distribution, plus the offsite permit, plus the. And so to be able to hold off on that, that's a big chunk of change. Interestingly, the state, once a license fee is in statute, the state has no ability to lower that fee or to X out the fee and still let you renew. And so what this flexible fee does is it would allow the comptroller, who regulates us, to charge up to, but not more than, $2,000 for the license for the class 1 and $500 for the class 9 and on and on and on. And the reason for that is it would allow them to renew you, but for a zero fee. And why it's helpful to still be renewed is we've had a lot of our members get caught up trying to renew their insurance or other things, and they want to see that you are up to snuff with your licenses. Applying for grants. Well, prove that you have a latest up-to-date license. Well, I don't, because I didn't have to renew this year. Wait, you're distilling without a license? Well, not really. They extended it. Who's they? The comptroller. Who's that? And it gives the flexibility of the state the ability to charge up to and then waive it. And, we have no plans for it other than that, but it builds in that flexibility going forward, because we don't know how long this is going to last, or if it's going to come back, or there's going to be another one.
Is there the flexibility under this for there to be a sliding scale that's built out? So if you have a production limit or something, could that be stuff that the regulator would then set down the road? It
could. And we did the same thing for frequency of how often our folks pay taxes. And now we're getting into some real exciting stuff. But, small distillers can pay quarterly or twice a year, or maybe even once a year. Large distilleries would have to pay no more than, no less frequently than quarterly, but probably monthly. And so the comptroller has the flexibility in law and statute and regulation to make that kind of phasing schedule. And so, sure, I mean, that could be done here as well. Small distillers would pay less, big distillers would pay, the listed fee.
Seems like it offers the regulator a lot of flexibility to make things easier for themselves potentially in a situation like what we're going through right now, and also maybe the potential for not necessarily leniency, but for some graded fees depending on expected revenue and size and production and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's awesome. What are there any challenges that we see coming into this session, or do we think that this session is going to be a little less sloggy, to use the word that's been used a few times?
Scott?
Well, there's no major things we're trying to push through other than the shipping. So that would be the one that I would want to really harp on and push. So I believe that the shipping and the home delivery, they should be tied into one if they're not.
Yep.
Okay. That's probably going to be our biggest push, I believe. Meanwhile, the sliding fees would be fantastic. And as one of the smaller distilleries in the state, that would be really fantastic. But, if I'm the only one, it would only benefit me. That's not the one I'm going to focus on. That's what I'm assuming. Yeah. That's the one that we're going to really try and push.
Yeah, so we've got a single bill that has all these pieces in it, and
Oh,
we're
really?
working with the wineries and breweries as well, because they're all looking for the exact same thing. So it's a single bill, and there's other things. To answer the question, Jim, we're watching a proposal to raise the sales tax on alcohol. There's all kinds of other regulatory things that we're going to try to push back on.
I tried to broach that with one of my friends, and she said she had to read up on it more.
Yep, there's a lot of reading, and the whole system of Annapolis has shifted. They're all online, and staff aren't all coming into the offices, so everything's being done remotely. It's a whole new world.
And I'm pulling it up right now, but there is an infographic that we'll make available on the Maryland Distillers Guild website shortly that has a breakdown of all of these pieces of legislation that we're discussing. Just to make it easy, it's something that you as a consumer can share with your friends and refer to when you hopefully will reach out to your elected officials and ask them to support this industry. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry, I totally spaced on having this pulled up already. And here we go.
Kevin, I'd be curious if you could just give a quick 5-second, 10-second, 30-second discussion of what it is like now with the legislature being so remote. What are some of the challenges for what you do?
Well, I mean, there are enormous challenges. So normally this is the second day of session. I'd be down in Annapolis, walking the halls of the House and the Senate, and rekindling relationships, reminding folks about the industry, talking to staff, talking to electeds about our legislation, and lobbyists and the general public are not allowed in and around the state buildings. So it's legislators going in there and sitting in glass surrounded cubicles on the floor, socially distanced, and it's an odd situation.
Yeah.
And I've seen some today have announced that they're holding constituent office hours, which is a very cool thing. So every Monday 8 to 9 a.m. you can hop on their Zoom and chat. But again, that's for constituents, right? So lobbyists are kind of tied to one-on-one meetings and all by Zoom. It's different.
Yep. Difficult.
Yeah, very different. So, but the show must go on, right? They've got major bills to pass. They have to pass a budget every year. So they've worked it out. Testify for our first bill tomorrow. So we'll see how all that works.
Yeah, how's that going to go?
Zoom.
We're going to be able to testify from the comfort of our own couch, and
yes, and I will send you a reminder to make sure you got pants on, and I know.
Kevin, is there going to be an opportunity for the public to help us advocate through this session, and how are we going to keep them apprised of what's going on?
There will be. So once we have a bill number and get a little farther down the path, we'll be announcing it via our social media and our website. And the way that you can help is to reach out to your elected senators and delegates and just tell them it's important. And you don't need to go into too many details. And, I wouldn't form letter it. I would just say, help these guys out. It's been an incredibly tough year. They're not asking for the world. It's all sensible stuff. Make this permanent and let's see how it rolls.
Awesome. Well, if you tuned in this afternoon live, thank you very much. If you're watching this later, please think about how you can support all these distilleries and their efforts to grow their businesses through some new legislation this year. It's an awesome opportunity for them to see some new changes and really solidify some of the new business opportunities that they've made investment into. So thank you for your ongoing support. Please visit both Scott and Jeff's distilleries. Do you guys want to give a quick rundown of where you're located and how people can reach out to you and get your products?
Sure, I'll let Jeff go first, or Jeff go first.
Sure. We're in Hyattsville, Maryland. We're right off of Route 1 in downtown Hyattsville in the Arts District. And we're open Saturdays for curbside pickups for online sales, and we do deliveries on Sundays.
And I'm with Patapsco Distilling. We're in historic downtown Sykesville, right on Main Street. You can't miss us. We're the largest building in the town and still one of the smallest distilleries in Maryland. But we do cocktails. Like I said, our single malt will be coming out about 2 weeks. And Kevin's already had a sample straight out of the barrel.
It is some good stuff.
Couldn't agree more, but I'm biased. So
Good answer. Good answer.
So yes,
come on
please
down.
show your support for these two great distilleries and all of our other distillery members here in the state. We've got some wonderful spirits being produced here. As Scott pointed out, this is a business that directly impacts our state's agriculture industry. So the more you buy, the more gets grown, the more gets harvested, and we like that. And if you have any questions about what the Maryland Distillers Guild is up to, please visit us at marylandspirits.org. We would be happy to answer any inquiries there or just have you peruse and learn more about the industry. Thank you so much.